Well, civilians are once again being caught in the crossfire in the Democratic Republic of Congo. International aid groups in the region say the escalating conflict between Congolese government forces and Hutu rebels is coming at an unacceptable humanitarian cost.
It's a conflict that's claimed millions of lives in more than a decade of fighting. From the regional capital, Goma, Mohamed Edo sent this exclusive report.
Congolese forces on patrol deep in the troubled North Kivu region, searching for members of a Hutu militia group, the Democratic Forces for the Liberation of Rwanda, FDLR, who are believed to have carried out the 1994 genocide in neighboring Rwanda. The government ordered the Kimia II, or silence offensive, back in January to flush out the Hutu fighters. But it is an operation with massive humanitarian consequences. Made up of former ragtag rebels, the ill-trained Congolese forces now stand accused themselves of carrying out killings and widespread rape, looting and arbitrary arrests of civilians.
We are tortured a lot. If you meet the forces, they rob you of what you have and beat you up. If you resist, you can be killed. We have no rights here.
We confronted one of the commanders of the government forces with these allegations.
If brought to our attention, we'll punish those found attacking civilians. We need to rebuild the confidence people have in us.
The Hutu militias are accused of deliberately targeting civilians, punishing them for their government's decision to launch military operations. Dandi Faida, a pygmy, fled her village deep in the rainforest after it was attacked by FDLR militiamen. She escaped with her daughter and grandson, but 5 members of her family were killed.
They set our houses on fire. Then they began throwing people into the blazing houses while shooting those who tried to escape.
The UN peacekeeping mission in Congo, MONUC, is backing the Congolese army in its operation. It provides significant logistical support, including transport, food, fuel, and medical aid to the Congolese soldiers. Many people here are unhappy that the UN mission in Congo is providing support to the tune of $6 million to an operation that is causing so much suffering for the people of Congo. And they are now increasing calls for the UN to use the leverage it has over the Congolese forces to ensure that civilians are protected. However, UN officials deny any wrongdoing.
We, of course, are not happy about all the consequences of the operation on civilian population. But we believe that by embedding ourselves in these operations, we mitigate the harm. We prevent much more from happening.
More than 5.5 million Congolese have lost their lives in the conflict since it began a little over a decade ago. Millions others have borne the brunt of the crisis. This latest phase of civilians being targeted by the very soldiers supposed to be protecting them is yet another sad chapter in their country's long history of war. Mohamed Ado, Al-Jazeera, Goma, Eastern Congo.
Well, for more on the story, we're joined here in our studio by Colin Thomas-Jensen. He is a policy advisor for the Enough Project, which aims to end genocide and crimes against humanity. He has considerable experience dealing with a range of issues across Africa, including the crises in Darfur and the Democratic Republic of Congo. Looking at that story, is it time to abandon this joint offensive by the Congolese forces and the UN?
Well, I think we need to recognize that this offensive has made some important gains. It's removed the Rwandan rebels from mining areas that they control, areas from which they're making a lot of money that continue to fuel this offensive. Abandoning the operation altogether right now could allow them back in those areas and where they reassert control and resume their insurgency. So what we're calling for, and many in the human rights community are calling for, is for a suspension of offensive operations right now, a consolidation of control over territory that the Congolese army has taken, and a resumption of new operations focused on the leadership of the FDLR, as they're the ones really holding a tight grip over the rank-and-file fighters.
But in the interim of any kind of immediate action, I mean, how is it that the suffering of the civilians can be prevented from getting even worse?
Yeah, the situation in Eastern Congo has been going on for a long time, and the political dynamic is changing all the time. The one constant is the situation facing civilians. There have been 2 offensives against the Rwandan rebels this year. 900,000 civilians have been displaced. We believe very strongly that now's the time for the United Nations peacekeeping force, instead of supporting a failing, in our opinion, offensive against the FDLR, now's the time for those peacekeepers to assert their role as protectors of the civilian population, a role that the Congolese army is simply not up for the challenge.
And the civilian population reporting, among the many atrocities that are being reported, that sexual violence is very prevalent. In fact, news agencies, including the Washington Post, have been reporting as far back as 2007 that perhaps it might even be the worst in the world in this region. So why is it that this is not getting the world attention that perhaps it deserves? Why is there not the kind of action that these numbers would suggest is necessary?
Yeah, the numbers are staggering. It's the deadliest conflict since World War II. It's arguably the most dangerous place in the world to be a woman. I think we are seeing some progress. Secretary of State Clinton made a trip to the region. She visited Goma, the capital of North Kivu province, against the wishes of her advisors, who thought it was too dangerous, to make a point that the United States is concerned with the situation in eastern Congo. But I think in the wake of that trip, in the aftermath of that trip, harnessing that attention, that energy, and turning it into real action is going to be the challenge facing the United States and other donors that have pumped a lot of money into trying to stabilize the situation in eastern Congo without much of an outcome.
And indeed, as Mohamed Otto reported in his piece there, that there are increasing calls for the UN to sort of assert its leverage to try and take some sort of action to protect the civilians. I mean, why isn't this being done?
Well, I think the United Nations is in a very difficult spot here. The UN peacekeeping force on the ground, it's consistently not been given the troops it needs, the capacities it needs by member states to carry out what is a very difficult mission in very difficult circumstances. Ultimately, the responsibility for whether this UN mission succeeds or fails in bringing security to eastern Congo lies with member states. And right now, the U.S. and others in the Security Council are relying largely on third world militaries to go in and perform a task without contributing assets of their own.
All right, we're going to leave it there. Thomas Jensen, Mr. Colin Thomas-Jensen, we appreciate you joining us. Thank you.
My pleasure.